So let's talk about this new EP. I mean, it's a pair of EPs, but what inspired this 90s alt-rock thing?
Man, you know, I was really inspired by a lot of different styles of music growing up. Of course, in the 90s, I was listening to a lot of hip-hop, but the rock of that era had an impression on me. And as I got older, I started realizing that some of my predecessors in soul music had covered, you know, some of the greatest rock songs you could imagine. And one that comes to mind is We Can Work It Out by Stevie Wonder, covering the Beatles. And I thought, man, is anybody doing that nowadays? So I called up a friend of mine, Otis McDonald, a great musician and songwriter and producer. And we just went through a list of the best classic 90s songs that you could imagine, classic rock songs.
And you got it. You got Blur, Song 2.
Yeah.
And you got, what else is it? What else is
Oh, come on. Don't Speak.
Don't Speak.
Lithium.
Lithium.
Wonderwall. Under the Bridge.
I mean,
Everybody Hurts. It was an exercise in nostalgia, but also what we did was we took the songs and just transformed them, flipped them, made them something brand new. And so when I play them for my kids, and I play them back to back, they tend to prefer my version. But they don't know the history, so one day they'll understand.
Amazing. Now look, we've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence at this conference, inevitably. That has affected music as well. There's a lot of hand-wringing about how it's going to affect the arts. How do you think about it as it pertains to your artistry?
Yeah, well, a lot of friends have been hitting me up asking if I'm planning to use AI for music or if I'm engaging with it. I've tried all of the programs to see if they can help. At this point, I feel like what I do is a lot better, and maybe, but I say that with a grain of salt because I can see that the tide will turn quickly. These programs are getting way smarter. And I think in music, we've been using AI for quite a while, but just not necessarily in like generative AI. We've been using a lot of algorithms in order to create drum loops or particular chord progressions. So it's not new, but we weren't calling it AI. We were just calling it the application or the plugin within the DAW, which is the digital audio workface.
So you see it as a tool, not so much as a risk of replacing your creativity.
It's a tool. I don't think it's a risk of replacing creativity. Ultimately, I think everybody's going to have an opportunity to use it to enhance and amplify what they do.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, whoever makes the best story is going to win.
Yeah. Now I want to go right to the audience for questions in just a minute, but I want to ask you a little bit about Stand Together.
Yeah.
This is an initiative you've been working with. Tell us about it.
Stand Together is an organization that works with change makers across the country to help them improve some of the country's worst issues, from economy to education to broken communities. And they're working in a way with me where they're sponsoring an album. I get to write songs inspired by their mission, inspired by the mission of making America better, inspired by the mission of amplifying nonprofit organizations that are doing the most amazing work on the ground. And I believe in what they're doing, they believe in what I'm doing, so we've come together to try to make this country a place where division isn't the norm, and try to get people to come together, even the most unlikely adversaries. If you can find one thing that you agree upon, that's where we stand together, that's where we work, that's where we move forward.
Yeah, we might divide about the best 90s alt-rock song. I mean, there's that, you know. Let me come to the audience. Does anybody have a question about Aloe's music before we turn to biotech and totally change the subject? Yes, way over here. Wait for a mic, please. And then your name and affiliation.
Hello, Aloe.
Hey.
I'm Alex Gross. I'm with Silicon Slopes Park City. I also am founder of EasyPress.ai. We make AI content for small, medium-sized businesses. But you just said something that really resonated with me, which is that you talked about the power of telling the best story, right? The best story will win. When you think about what the best story is it an A/B test to figure out what's performative, or is it about really just self-expression? And how do you see that changing in the future?
Ultimately, it depends on everyone's perspective and intention within the art that they're creating. I like to tell the best story that's going to offer people an opportunity to be inspired, be motivated, and to seek to aspire to something great. Some folks just want money, so if they can tell the best story for that, that's easy. You come up with a simple song with a repetitive hook with the same chord progression as everyone else, and you probably make money. But what I'm looking at in terms of telling stories, I'm thinking about the greatest songwriters of all time, according to my ledger, which, you know, Joni Mitchell's at the top. We're talking about Cat Stevens and James Taylor, Billy Joel and Paul Simon, Nina Simone, Stevie Wonder, right? This is the book of music that I'm listening to determine what is the best story, you know? And I've kind of put AI up to the test to see if they can match a Joni Mitchell's Both Sides or a Boxer or something like that, and it's not there yet.
It's a high bar. It's a high bar. Thank you for that question. All right, let's switch to the biotech side of your life. So, Major, you're trying to make this alternative to vaccines, and it involves something called peptoids. So for the non-scientists here, please explain to us what on earth is an alternative to vaccines as it pertains to transmissible.
Started as an alternative to vaccines, but you know, with most companies, you pivot until you make it. I had you know, a bout with COVID, and I had been vaccinated and boosted, and I was looking for a host-directed prophylactic solution. And after reading paper upon paper upon paper, I happened upon this paper by Dr. Gomika Udugamasoria at the University of Houston School of Pharmacology, where he's talking about blocking interphase of the virus and the cell receptor. And I thought, that's brilliant. Why can't we just keep the viruses from entering the cells? It stops replication, and then it'll just either get excreted or it'll degrade within your system. So I contacted him, sponsored some research, and it turned out there was no money for COVID anymore. So we ended up building this business in order to advance his concept around drug discovery. And so beyond just vaccination, it's a drug discovery platform that is addressing his 25 years of research in oncology and the patents that he holds, addressing autoimmune dysfunction and immune dysregulation, and addressing infectious disease, like viruses.
Right.
So taking the model of his SARS-CoV-2 molecule and applying that concept to many other viruses.
And so you looked at all that, and you were, as you were doing your beach reading on transmissible disease, you know, and you were like, you know, my life isn't complicated enough. I'm going to start this whole other thing. How did this become an actual venture for you?
So I wasn't trying to start a business. It was philanthropy at first. And so I reached out to the university and the professor, but then realized quickly that, you know, universities are risk averse, and they're not necessarily going to prop up a company. They have divisions that are, you know, incubation divisions and tech innovation divisions, but it really takes an outsider to come in and actually help push.
Right.
And when I realized that, and I recognized the amazing technology that Gomika has, I wanted to help. And I felt like the only way to really help was to start a company and use the resources and relationships that I have, the access that I have, to put him in the room. And so I'm able to get him in front of you know, top VCs, top scientists, and regulators, which is not so easy for a professor who's got class load, a mortgage to pay, to get put through college. And so we're going to build this together, and hopefully we'll save a lot of lives.
Tell me a little bit of, these are very different walks, right? Tell me a little bit about the similarities between your music life and your biotech life. And forgive me if I'm drawing too hard a distinction here. And tell me about the commonalities, because, you know, I don't think your music has regulators, but you tell me, you know.
Music doesn't necessarily have regulators. I mean,
I hope
ultimately, the audience is the regulator. You guys determine whether or not the song is viable. Actually, that's not true. I play the songs for my kids in the car on the way to school, and they're the first.
The ultimate regulator.
They are the first layer. But I would say, in the terms of creativity, you know, Gomika's working with, he's a chemical biologist, so he's working with the periodical table, and I'm working with 12 notes. And so we get to play in this world of creativity to see what we can do. When, you know, he's doing chemical synthesis, I'm in the studio doing musical synthesis. And we're trying to see what's going to make somebody feel better. I think there's some similarities there. But aside from that, it's pretty diverse, pretty different.
Any surprises on the biotech side of things that that you just never would have imagined running into music?
It's so hard.
Go on.
Business is hard. So I thought I was a businessman because I had a publishing company, a touring company, a record company.
Sure.
And then I started Biotech, and I was like, that's not business. This is much different, and the stakes are much higher, and it takes so many more people. Mm-hmm. At the end of a movie, when you watch a film and you see the credits rolling, and you're like, when are these credits going to end? There's 1 million people on this film. That's starting a business. Mm-hmm. That's Biotech. Mm-hmm. And making a song, I could wake up in the morning, come up with an idea, and by the end of the night, distribute it to 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It doesn't require the laundry list of everyone else to help. And those two are like really diametrically opposed. Like I love the freedom I have in making music by myself.
Yes.
And I love collaborating as well, but it's really impossible to do, business and biotech really by yourself.
Yeah, fascinating.
It takes a team.
It does. Let's go to the audience for another question. I saw one back here. Yes, please. Name and affiliation, please.
Yeah, Venk Vardhan, co-founder and CEO of Nanoware, healthcare remote diagnostics company. Aloe, first of all, thank you for everything you've given all of us with your songs throughout the career. You've been at this in seeing a lot of the economics of music and songwriting change over the years. I'm curious as to your anticipation of how it's going to continue to evolve in the future for the next gen of songwriters. Like we used to buy CDs and full albums, and then we would just buy one song that we wanted from Apple Music, and now teenagers are getting their parents to shell out 10 grand for a Taylor Swift concert, right? So like, what's the next step there, and how do you think that's going to impact the next gen of songwriters?
If I had the crystal ball, I would not be sitting here with you right now. But I would say, things have changed dramatically because of streaming. I think Pandora's box is open, and we won't ever be able to go back. I was hopeful that DSPs or service providers would be the conduit to the friction in the pay line. So rather than Spotify charging you $10 a month or whatever it is, it potentially could be Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint charging you at the tap, like when you use your faucet or your light switch. That's hopeful for me because I think pay for play becomes a lot more easier for artists. Right now we're in a pool where the income that we get is dependent on the amount of streams that we make pro rata. So the biggest artists in the world are getting the lion's share. Everybody else kind of gets their pro rata share based on all of the money that goes into the pool from subscribers. I'd much rather live or die by the value of my song at the tap, which is kind of the way it was in the past. I don't know if we're going back there. Where is it going in the future? Like I said, hard to say. Probably a lot more regional than like massive global artists, and a lot more live and local live.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, let's do one more question, if you don't mind. One more. Anything? Amazing. All right, well, I've got a question.
Right there.
Oh, is there one? Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for your music and the gift of listening to it for the past decade. My name is Nate. A question, we've seen a lot of AI that can emulate how artists sound. And so it seems like, an AI track will come out and it sounds like something that the Drake or The Weeknd or somebody else might have written and actually sung. Do you kind of see that as, or what role do you see that playing in the future of music? Like, do you see a future in AI where perhaps a artist licenses their voice or their likeness to a song and then licenses a AI contract out for generating songs that sound like they sung it? Or do you feel like that industry is something that is just kind of like a fad or might fade away at some point?
I think what you're touching on is possibility. I had a conversation early on with a company called Metaphysic AI and a company called Respeecher. They helped me to translate songs and sing them in Italian and Mandarin and Spanish and French. And I look like I'm actually singing the song in those languages and speaking with perfect dialect. I think that personally, I would get involved in that kind of thing. I think as I get older, there's going to be an era of Aloe Blacc that ultimately is bankable, and that era, I think I could probably continue to make money on for time in memoriam. I was friends with Bill Withers before he passed, and he stopped singing as he aged. And I always thought to myself, like, I'd love to hear what he would want to say as an older person. But I think for him, he just realized, like, this younger generation is not interested in what I have to say. My voice doesn't sound the same. So if I can, put that in a time capsule and then distribute that, that would be, I think, the best use of AI. I'm all over it.